And now we're going to have a brief, I think, 10-minute break so that we can do that mingling, getting to know folks that we maybe don't normally talk to, the collaboration we've been talking about. Are there any other announcements, Ian? Okay. Thanks. We'll see you back here in about 10 minutes. All right, thanks for coming back from break, everybody. I hope you had a chance to have at least a brief conversation with someone that you maybe haven't spoken to or don't know well. I am delighted to introduce our next two speakers. They're going to be talking to us about accessibility at the university, and we have Jenn Sanders. She's a web developer on the Drupal team in the Office of Information Technology. She specializes in front-end development and web accessibility. And she's known for her love of reptiles and her ability to inadvertently injure herself. Please try not to fall off the stage.
I make no promises.
Okay, we'll try and catch you. And then Jenn Czeck, she's a web developer in academic support resources. Her areas of expertise include web development, usability, and accessibility. She can be identified by her various code-related items of clothing, including today, it looks like shoes and skirt. Well done. All right, well, can we have a round of applause for the Jenns?
All right, thank you, everyone. Good morning. As mentioned, I am Jenn Sanders. This is the Jenn Czeck. And we're going to talk today about the accessibility ambassadors and accessibility as an overall concept. A lot of what we're talking about might be familiar to you, but it's going to be a nice recap and maybe brushing up on some topics that you already know and how they're affected by accessibility and how they affect people with disabilities. All right, so first off, the accessibility ambassadors. So we're a group of university employees from all across the institution who are dedicated to promoting accessibility as a whole.
I think I'm gonna walk over that way since you seem to be more. I'm more animated. I'm Jenn with 2 N's because, you know, I have to be more animated. It's not limited to just developers. Accessibility is everyone from secretaries to server admins. I don't care if you use Pine to write an email. There's things that you can do to help with accessibility.
Yeah, and we are a newer group. We're just having some of our first public meetings. So it's a good time to join up. There's plenty of room to grow, improve yourself, and have your voice heard as we start to grow as a group overall. So what is digital accessibility? I'm guessing that most of you know what that is as a concept, but we're going to go over it anyway. So
it's, sorry, too close. It's often shortened to ally, but it's because there's 11 letters between the A and Y in accessibility, so it's kind of sneaky. It's lead speak, but like justified and business appropriate lead speak. It's also creating digital content that can be used by everyone, and it's designing in a way that gives people with disabilities an equal experience. And one of the really big, awesome parts about it is, if you make it better with people with disabilities, it's often better for everybody. I give the wonderful example of Siri. When people ask digital assistants, the alt text is used by your phone to find the stuff for you. So if you actually think about that, you make it better for people with phones.
Which is everyone.
Yes.
But to follow up on that, poor design and poor accessibility can equally affect anyone at any time, regardless of their level of ability or whether or not they're considered disabled. So for example, disabilities can be permanent, temporary, or situational. A permanent disability might be someone who is missing a limb or has impaired motor function or limited use of their arms. Also somebody with hearing loss. A temporary disability could be somebody with a broken arm or an ear infection. Fun fact, when I started working at the university, I had been in an accident and was all kinds of messed up and had a dislocated elbow, broken wrist, and then a month later broke my kneecap. Yes, and so I quickly learned about accessible design and why keyboard nav was important because it was physically painful for me to use a mouse. But also it can be situational, that you're holding a small child or just holding something heavy and you can't exactly use both arms, or you're in a loud area, and so you can't hear something that's on a video. And even if these aren't necessarily disabilities, these are something where accessible design helps everybody, regardless of your level of ability or whether you are considered disabled.
Yep, and accessibility ensures equal access to all users because, as said, you don't know what the temporary issues are, you don't know what your situations is, and you don't know who your user base is because you make something, you push it off, and then you wait for the tickets that come in to say it's not working. So accessibility also ensures compliance with the best coding practices, WCAG, or WCA 2, so there's worldwide consortium stuff that is, international standards. And it also just means a better constructed product because it's a better experience for everybody.
So we're going to be going over the 6 core skills, and these are kind of a good foundation of what to look at when you're starting learning about accessibility. These are taken from the Accessible U site, which is the U's website on digital accessibility. It has a lot of really great resources for both beginners and those who are more advanced. So definitely take a look at it. It is something that I use quite frequently in my job. So first are headings. Those of you who code are probably pretty familiar with them. And headings are not sizes. They have semantic meaning, and they lay out the structure of your page. So you should have one heading 1, which is your main heading, the title, and then you can have various subheadings that nest within each other. And the reason that having these set up correctly is important is because a lot of screen reading software allows the user to sort of navigate the page through headings like a table of contents. The example that I use is that if you have an about page, your H1 would be about us. Your H2 could be our staff, and you have an H3 for our sales team, our management. And if those are out of order, it's not going to make sense to someone with a screen reader because your H1 is our sales staff, your H2 is about us, and H3 is our management. And so it doesn't have a hierarchical structure that is logical. The basic rule is that you should follow a consistent order. You should have one H1, H2 should be beneath an H1, H3 should be an H2, and so on.
And another thing is search engines also take headers into account for weighing the value of different words. So you can also impact your search engine optimization by properly using headings. So the next one is hyperlinks. Everyone writes emails. Everyone writes documentation. At least I hope you write documentation. So one of the big things is users should know where the link goes. Saying click here, everyone hates that. Does that mean I have to log in? What am I going to? Is it going to a new site? I don't know. I'm not going to click on it because I've been burned. I lived through the early 2000s. We've been, rickrolled too many times. We don't click on things we don't know where they're going.
That hurts, Jen. That hurts.
I haven't rickrolled you yet. Yes, that was a threat. The text should be descriptive. Avoid, read more, click here. Avoid having the alt text the same as the title. There is an exception here. If you're handing out a printed handout, then have the big, long, giant, like Google Doc link, because then someone can type it if you're not giving them a digital thing.
Yeah. And another reason that you want to avoid things like read more, click here, is that screen readers will have an option to sort of skip to different links. So somebody can find out, I'm trying to find out where I should go for this specific case. If you just have a bunch of links that say, read more, all the here's read more, read more, read more, click here, and it gives them no information about what they're looking for. So lists are another one that can be kind of abused. So lists should be an actual HTML list. Don't try to cheat by making dashes or stars. That is not a list, and I will hunt you down. So what you should understand with lists is that there are going to be 2 types, what we call an ordered list and an unordered list. An unordered list is bullets. These are things that can be used in any order. It doesn't matter in what order they're presented. So for example, a grocery list, eggs, milk, bread, coffee. Doesn't matter what order you have them in, they have equal value. But number lists or order lists are things that follow a specific order. So in this case, instructions, that you have to beat the eggs before you cook them on a skillet. If you get those out of order, things are not going to go well for you. And that's the basic thing to remember with lists, is that don't try to just substitute one for the other. They have meaning, and be sure to think about logically what this is going to be used for.
The next one is color contrast. Yay! It's no longer, GeoCities is dead, and so is Zanga. So the excuses for having sites that make your eyes bleed, I don't do it anymore. We learned that now. So there needs to be sufficient difference between the text and the background. Levels of contrast require change upon the text size. So if you have teeny tiny text, make sure people can read it. If you have really big giant text, you can do some more crazy things like presentations and such. But it's a big thing, because, yeah, just do color contrast. I do not want to relive my days of having purple and pink websites with unicorns and sparkles everywhere. Because I make those, and don't, get on my turf.
I was about to say. So next is captions and transcripts. And for those who are unable to see our graphic, I'd like to explain it to you. It is a screen cap of someone watching Zoolander on Netflix, with the caption, "Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills." And so this is important because this is obviously a pivotal moment and you want to understand what's being said. So captions and transcripts are necessary for content with sound. Captions display the same time that sound plays or words are spoken in a video. For example, subtitles are a type of caption. And transcripts are a full script of the audio content and often can contain descriptions of what's going on. Now, in a perfect world, you would have both because they both serve different purposes. Captions are something that occurs with the action, so you watch it with the video. Transcripts are something that is separate, that you can read by yourself, but is more like a script or a teleplay. And so they serve different functions. Somebody who is hearing impaired but is able to see the action will probably benefit more from a caption. Somebody who is visually impaired and uses a screen reader will probably benefit more from a transcript, since it will have descriptions of what's going on as well. Having one is sufficient. Ideally, you would want both, but if you are unable to get captions, a transcript will suffice.
All right, and now we're getting back to the alt text. Yay! So alt text, the whole point of it is to describe the image. And search engines use it to categorize images. Avoid ambiguous or overly verbose. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Please don't use 1,000 words in your alt text. And never use the file name, because it just gets really annoying to be like image _001b.jpg doesn't really tell me anything. So our little picture image has, picture of a student. That gives me no value. But if your caption is a postgraduate engineering student working on working in the new electron microscope lab, that gives you a better idea of maybe what the student is wearing. You're like, oh, this is gonna be an older student because it says it's postgraduate. And if you see the words electron microscope, you're gonna think, ooh, fancy technology, versus student in a lab. Does that mean it's like an engineering lab? Is it a geology lab? What is that student around? So alt text needs to add value to that image, because if that image is there, there's a reason, and the alt text should explain succinctly why that reason for that image is there.
And a good rule of thumb with alt text is, imagine if your image was broken or didn't display what you would want the user to know about that image. Because if your image, again, is broken, it'll show the alt text instead. So what do you want the user to know about that image, or why is it there? So those are the 6 core skills. But wait, there's more. I got one cheesy line. I'm gonna ham it up.
Yeah.
So regarding the accessibility ambassadors again, we are starting up some of our first kind of open groups. If you would like to know about more, you should take a look at us. It's a good place to meet other people who are interested and passionate about accessibility here.
Yeah, once again, you don't need to be an expert. We welcome anyone, so anyone from communications people up to professors to students, whatever. We know and understand the regs and the requirements, so we'll be more than happy to help explain that to you, because pretty much anything that the Worldwide Consortium puts out is really dry and hard to understand.
So we're going to be having a study group in December. The location and exact date are still to be determined, but it's a good place where you can come, ask questions, learn, and meet others. So if you want to teach something about accessibility, come join us. If you want to learn something about accessibility, also come join us. We will be there for you. And we'll be posting updates in the Accessibility Slack channel on Tech People. So be sure to check us out or send us an email if you have any questions. Lastly, we have some tools and resources we'd like to go over as you start using accessibility that can really help you along the way. So first is Wave, and this is probably the most common testing tool that you'll see out there. It is an automated checker that's written by WebAIM. They're an organization out of Utah State University. And so it works as a Chrome and I believe Firefox extension, or as just a web page where you put in a URL. It'll run some checks and then give you lists of errors and violations that you might want to look at. It will also link to the documentation of specifically what is in violation here and what needs to be done to fix it.
Yep. The next one is Pally, and you notice they're using the ones there instead of the L's to be sneaky like the ally. This is another checker. This is one that you can either stand up as a server by itself and have it run automatically on a schedule against your websites. You can also run it through the command line, or just recently I was able to integrate it within a pipeline for one of my new applications, so anytime we make a change to the front end, it runs this accessibility checker. It also is like Wave. It tells you the line of where the issue is, and the thing that I like about Pally is if it's a color contrast issue, it gives you an example of a hex value that you could use to make it pass. So it's all like, here's your problem. Here's the thing that you could fix it with. It makes my life easy.
Pally is a good tool. I like it a lot. WebAIM Contrast Checker is another tool by WebAIM. And with this, you put in 2 colors, their hex values, or I believe they're RGB, and it will give you the color contrast ratio and whether it is WCAG compliant for both small and large text. And then it will have an option to lighten or darken the colors, so you can kind of play with it until you get something that is in compliance.
Because I'm noticing people taking notes, don't worry, we'll have the link to this entire presentation at the end so you guys can get the whole thing.
We thought of that.
So the next one is Hexna. This is something that's really handy for designers, or if you're making something from scratch, you can do your entire color palette. You can put in 12 colors at once, and it will compare all of them. So it'll have one as the foreground color, and then it'll go against all the rest of the background color. It will tell you if it passes 2A or 3A compliance, and you can have it show all the ones that, all the combinations, or just the ones that pass. So if you just want a quick, here's the colors I like, what combinations can I use them in? It tells you. It's great.
And then there's also Chrome Lens. This is specifically a Chrome extension written by Google. And what it does is it alters your page display as it would to someone with particular vision impairments. They have various ranges of color blindness and then also different levels of just vision impairment, all the way to full blindness where it will black out your screen. And this is a good way to test your keyboard navigation and screen reader testing. And one of the really cool features is it has something called a tab trace tool so that you can test your keyboard navigation, and it will put a visual indicator on your page of where it's getting focus so that you can make sure the tab order is logical and consistent.
The next one is the Collusion Image Alt Text Viewer. This one breaks all the images on your website, so it just only shows the text. So then that way you can see, does your alt text make sense, and how does that impact the value of your page?
I will note with the Collusion extension, it doesn't put a border or anything around the alt text. It just has the text in green. So if you weren't really aware what it looks like with the pictures, sometimes it can be like, oh, it's not working. I'm just getting text. So something just to keep in mind. And then lastly is Totally, and that is Totally with the ally. And this is just a bookmark, just like a checker that you add to your bookmarks, and it will run on any page. But what's really nice about this one is it has a feature called the Screen Reader Wand, where if you hover over a place on your page, it will show you in text what a screen reader would be able to find. Now, whenever possible, you should be checking with a screen reader, but this is really good if you just want to check in one place of, can it find my alt text? Did I do this correctly? So it's good for on-the-spot checks. And next are some resources on where you can learn more information.
Yeah, so we don't need to really go through that because the general resources, WebAIM, the WCAG documentation. So if you want to, fall asleep and read about so many different things and you'd be like, why does this mean what? Oh, you just want alt text? You can go there. It's really handy because sometimes it's nice to find out the exceptions to cases, because It's legal documentation, so there's always an exception. But you have to go through a lot of really dry stuff to get through that.
And then for university-specific resources, there is the Disability Resource Center and Accessible U. There's also the Web and Tech Accessibility ICOP, which I believe meets monthly and is a group of people on campus interested in accessibility. And the Accessibility Ambassadors is our group, which is a bit more focused on change and personal development. And then as we mentioned, here is the URL. So if you want to go ahead and look at this later, check out those resources, that is available. And I'll leave that up for a second so people can take pictures.
Yep, and once again, those are the ones and not L's in our Z link.
Yeah, so it is z.umn.edu/introally-a11y, and that's one word. All right, so thank you for looking at our presentation, and we have a couple minutes for questions, I believe.
Yep.
I have seen some sites where when you print the site out, it will show you the URLs, the content, and the linked content. And when you're looking at it on the screen, you do not see that. Do you know anything about how to do that?
I believe that might be a setting in your browser. Are you talking about how at the top of the page it will show the URL of the page you're on?
No, no, it's not this. It's when you print the page.
Right.
So all of the URLs. Could you repeat the question?
Yep. I'm going to repeat the question. This is for when you're printing a website and you have that descriptive link text, but you don't have the full link like you do for like a document. That is usually in your print CSS. Bootstrap CSS, I think Bootstrap 4 has that automatically in it right now. So there is things that you can do with your CSS to say, also show the alt show the href for the link. And I think there's also some JavaScript libraries for that. I haven't done that outside of my Bootstrap framework, so I don't remember. But yes, look at your print CSS. That's a big thing too, especially with people who have like accordions, or if you have tab stuff and you have stuff that you think that people are going to print. Make sure when you click the print, not everything is closed, because a lot of them default to mobile view when you print, and that's not very helpful. Anything else?
You mentioned screen readers, and I don't know if you mentioned a specific one. I was wondering what screen reader you recommend for this kind of case.
So there are various ones out there. The one that I
Repeat the question.
Oh, yes, sorry. So the question is regarding screen reading software, what's recommended for testing? So the most commonly used software is JAWS. However, that is pretty expensive. There's a trial version that runs for 40 minutes. The one that I like to use is called NVDA. It is completely free. It does have more limited functionality than JAWS, but it's good for testing. And then most operating systems will come with one just built in. For Windows, it's Windows Eyes, and Mac, I believe it's VoiceOver.
Yep, Mac is VoiceOver. That's what I do a lot of my testing with, and you can adjust the voices and the speed, and you can get it pretty entertaining when you forget that you have it turned on and you have music running, and then you do something else and then everything's narrating and you're like, who is looking over my shoulder and telling me what I'm doing?
Yes, I somehow managed to get my computer so that whenever I reboot, JAWS starts, and so it will read to me as I'm putting in my password, and it's very inconvenient, and I don't know how I did it.
Anything else? Okay. Well, if that's it, thank you very much. And both of us are on Slack, and so we have our Slack handles on there too. So feel free to ask us questions if needed.